Hello and welcome to this pattern recognition video where I have some chess puzzles involving attacking the king. So pause at any time if you need to take longer to think about the problems. If not, let's dive into this. And white has just moved the queen over here, attacking our queen. Because this involves attacking the castled king, let's see what we can do here. Usually you want to look for any checks, but at the moment there are no immediate checks. So we could look at any captures or threats. We have a bishop lined up here to help with the attack, the queen. Maybe we want to push this pawn and attack here. That's a possibility, attacking the queen. So let's see. It looks like that might be the best way forward. If we push this pawn, then what? The queen is under attack. The knight could just swoop in there. So the knight captures, then I don't know, then it's kind of tricky. So we push the pawn to f3, knight captures, then what? Exchange the rook for the knight. The queen can't capture, so this pawn would have to capture because this rook is still eyeing the f3 square, the second rook. So at this point, I think that would work. So try and calculate it out in your head. So when you're trying to work on pattern recognition, for those beginners out there that aren't familiar, basically you want to pick some tactics, a set of tactical problems, and then you don't want them to be too hard, or then you're working maybe more on calculation. So this one might be a little difficult, but you go through the problems the first time nice and slow, and then instead of just forgetting about those problems, you go through them again up to 7 times to make sure they are imprinted into your long-term memory instead of just forgetting those patterns. So here we go. We're going to capture, rook captures, and then if they capture here, we can just recapture with our other rook, and then the king will be kind of open, so we could attack the king. And then remember, our bishop is here as well, so we would just start piling up on the king here. All right, they didn't go much further. I'll pull up the analysis. That way we could see, how it may have continued. So after queen to e2, we had f3, knight captured, and then rook captures. So here, the best thing it looks like would be knight to d1, according to the computer, moving the knight up here. Maybe then you could bring it back to here and then try and help block. But, the obvious move, if you capture here, maybe a beginner would play this and not be aware of the danger. So this would be an inaccuracy. If they capture, well then they don't even recommend bringing or capturing with the rook. That's the second most recommended move. But, you know, if we do that, what is best? The second best move is to just give up the queen for that rook. Now they're saying that now the computer has upgraded that to the best move, to just give up the queen. But anyway, to move this video along, if they try and do something like this, you know, a more passive move, well, then you have queen to g5. The king is forced over here, and then the rook is just going to capture, backed up by that bishop down there. You know, so it'd be a mate here. All right, let's move on to the next problem so I can try and at least get 10 problems in. So here we go. We just had a capture here. We're looking at how to attack the castled king. Well, look for those checks first, as they are most forcing. And that looks to be the best move here. If we jump our knight in here, you know, attacking the king, we're going to follow up possibly with this move if the king runs into the corner. But if the king comes up trying to attack the knight, well, then we can just check. The king will be forced into that corner, and then we can mate on b1. So here we go. Check. And they just give their queen up, you know, as that avoids mate. But now queen versus two bishops, you know, and then there's a lot of pawns on the board. You'll be able to do some damage here. All right, next problem. The queen has created a battery lining up on our king and this pawn here as well. But it is protected by queen and king at the moment. How do we attack the castled king over here? All right. Well, look at those checks first, as I always, well, not always, as I usually say, because they are the most forcing. So we have one check. What happens if we capture here? Because of this bishop, the king is forced to capture, and then our queen can deliver a mate here. So check and mate. Hopefully you found that one. I've tried to keep these problems rated between 500 and 1500. I'll do these 10 problems, and if most of them are easier, then maybe I'll do another video in the future where I bump the difficulty level up. You know, feel free to leave comments and let me know. All right, next problem. We just had white capture a rook, and oh, this is the same problem here. So hopefully you know how to solve this one now. All right. Here we go. We're going to check, and the queen will probably capture. You know, otherwise it'll lead to a mate, as you saw earlier. And we just are ahead. A queen for the bishop pair. All right, next problem. A bishop has gone to b7, eyeing the long diagonal through the center and down towards our king. Our knight is under attack by 2 pieces now, but defended by 2. So how do we attack the castled king? Now, one common pattern when you're attacking a castled king is to try and knock out the defenders or the pawn cover around the king. So, you know, maybe an option is to just knock out the knight here, but then the bishop could just recapture. Then what do we have? So if knight captures, bishop captures, we could, you know, line our rook up here somewhere along here, aiming up here maybe with the bishop. Maybe there's this possibility, jumping the knight up here and putting pressure on this pawn along with the bishop. That might be a possibility. But the knight would be guarding along with the king. We could try and bring the rook in next to help. But then this pawn could just push forward, attacking our knight. I don't know. It looks like maybe a good move to just go ahead and take the knight. Bishop will probably recapture so the pawns aren't broken apart here. Then how do we continue? Because if you have a check or an attack, you want to make sure that once you start it, you have a good follow-up. So how do we follow this up? Capture, bishop recaptures, and then our rook maybe goes here, eyeing the pawn. Now there is a possibility of this queen moving here and threatening a mate in one, after the queen moves there. So we have to keep that in mind. It's always important not to just look at your plans, but see what the opponent can do, especially if you don't have a forcing line. If you have to, make a few moves before the attack begins or is completed. So capture the knight. Bishop recaptures. Rook moves here, lining up with bishop, threatening to capture with check. If the queen goes here to threaten a mate, well then we could capture that pawn with check. The king would have to move onto the H file, and then we could move the bishop with a discovered check and attack the queen. We could move it back here, and then we would be attacking the queen if the queen went to c6. So I think this looks good. Capture, bishop captures. Rook lines up on the H file, aiming at this along with the bishop. So that may lead to one of the pawns being pushed forward. Probably this pawn, and then the bishop could fianchetto back in there. So then what? If that happens, though, we could bring our other bishop in there and try and knock their bishop out of there. Then try and get our queen up in the action at some point. All right. I think I'm going to go that way. So capture. They don't like that move. All right. Why was that a bad move? Oh, they probably want the queen up there instead. So queen threatening a mate in one. No, they don't even like that. Okay, what? Okay. All right, this is a good pattern. I guess I should have looked at the other moves more deeply. So we use the bishop. If the king captures, then our queen can jump up here and our rook can follow up. So that... Yeah, now the king would have to capture. Well, not have to, but if the king captures, then our queen could jump up here with check, giving us time to bring our rook over, threatening a mate here. Let's take a look at that. I'll pull it up. So the bishop moved to b7. We captured, bishop captures, and then we capture here. The best move is for the king to capture. Then we check with the queen, forcing the king back. Rook to h3 threatens a mate in 1. And it looks like the best move is well, bishop to h4 to just block, get that bishop out of there. And then the queen can just capture. And now we have what? We're ahead by a pawn for the moment. And there's a threat of mate on the h-file, so f5 looks like that would be the best move. Then we can just check, king to f7. And here it looks like the best thing to do is to check again. And either king to g8. King to e7 is recommended. But if you go to e7, then the bishop has time to develop with check. So what if the king just goes back to g8? Then you have queen checking. I don't know. Is it leading to a draw? Queen back to h5 is best. If the king goes back up to g8, now what do you do? They recommend queen to h7 again. But we're going to have a draw by repetition of position if we're not careful. I don't know. Feel free to leave a comment. I'm going to move along here. But it looks like the king could just hide back and forth in there. You are ahead by a pawn. So you could maybe protect this pawn and just be ahead in material. All right. Well, on to the next problem. We have 5 more to go. So here we go. Knight has captured pawn in the center. It's backed up by the queen. But we are looking for an attack on the castled king here. So we have the queen hovering around the king here. So if we just bring our knight up, then we're piling up on this square with the king. The only thing that could be done is for the rook to move, but then we'll be able to check here on h7, and then it looks like mate here. So that's what we're going to do. Yeah, they don't even continue. But, here's what would happen. After this position, it's mate in 4. It looks like you could delay the inevitable by checking with your checking with the knight. But after the knight captures on e2 or goes to f3, you could just capture that knight and be ahead in material. Then what? Then the queen would capture. But you can just take the queen then. So it just delays. So, eventually they could try and move this what do they recommend? Rook at f to b8. But then you have this. You just have capture. The king is forced to move, and then you mate here. All right, on to the next problem. I hope you're doing well with these. We have 4 more to go. Rook has just dropped back to d8 here. And what now? How do we attack that castled king? Well, we have weaknesses around here, but the bishop is there, but this pawn is covering that square. So we could try and bring our queen up here. But, you know, that doesn't really do much at the moment. We'd have to bring a knight in here next to threaten this h7 square, maybe. Huh. But the problem is, if they capture that, maybe, or the bishop captures our knight in the meantime. But I don't know. This still looks like one of the best moves is to move the queen here. The threat is to bring the knight up and try and attack here on h7. But what will our opponent do in the meantime? So, queen here. Maybe they try and knock this knight out. We recapture. Then, you know, if they capture here, we would just exchange material. You know, and then that threat is going to be renewed here. All right, here we go. Queen. We have the capture. The knight recaptures. And then it's looking pretty serious, you know, if we jump up here and target that. So I'm not going to play that out. Let me try and finish the final 3 problems here. We have a knight jumping forward, you know, getting closer to our king. But how can we attack the opponent's king? Well, we have this pinned pawn here. Oh, and our queen is under attack. So that is quite serious. Huh. What do we do about our queen under attack by this knight? All right. Well, I think we have to get our other pieces involved. You know, if we move this knight here, we have a bishop attacking, another bishop attacking. If we jump our knight up here, well, at the moment, the bishop could just take that. So, is there an option of going here with check, forcing the king to capture, and then we can have a discovered attack with this bishop? But where would be best to place the bishop? You know, and then our opponent could just block here. So there is a lot going on in this problem. All right. Well, you know, look at checks first because they're most forcing. So maybe we just capture here with check. If the king captures, then we can capture here with another check, and break the king's pawn protection apart. If the king tries to run into the corner, then we have that knight move with the discovered attack. So that looks to be best. Capture, then we follow up by capturing here. Now our rook is preventing the king from running to there. If the king goes here, then once again we have some discovered attack possibilities. Oh, that would be a mate if we went there, because it's a double check. So let's see what the computer actually says about this. So after knight attacks our queen, we check the king. The best thing is for the king to capture. Queen captures with check. And now the best move to prevent a mate in one is king up to f1. And now we have knight to e5. Knight to e5 or d4. There are multiple moves. Apparently knight to d4. They like that best. Because we're threatening a mate right here. Mate in one. So knight to f3 would block. So block. Oh, but you have this mate in two. Queen checks. Knight blocks. And then queen to g2 here. All right, so crazy attack. I don't know, maybe these were a little, some of these are a little more complicated, so it's a little more calculation, but there's still some interesting patterns in there. So let's do the final two here. All right, a knight has just jumped forward to c3. How do we attack this king? Well, we have the bishop crisscrossing, the queen lined up on the king. The other bishop is attacking this pawn along with the queen. So, oh, and our bishop is under attack here, so we need to do something about that. Maybe we just capture here. If they recapture, we capture, and then it'll lead to a mate. So if we capture this pawn, white should not recapture. But what else do they have? It's not looking too good. So I think that's the way to go. Capture. Oh, they capture with check. So we should go ahead and capture. And then there's still this threat looming here of the queen being able to go here. If this bishop is captured, the queen can recapture on g3, and then a mate will follow there. All right, the final problem. I hope you've been doing well so far. A pawn is pushed forward. Now what? What can we do here? All right, we want to attack the king. Well, we don't have many pieces in order to attack here. We have a rook and the queen. Maybe we can push this pawn up. But if we capture, there could just be a recapture with the queen. That would allow us to maybe pick this pawn off in the future, and then threaten to capture this with a check. All right. Can this rook do anything? You know, if the rook captures, king would just recapture, and I don't really see much of a follow-up after that. Another option, if the rook captures here, targeting the queen, if the queen just recaptures, then do we have anything? I don't see a good follow-up with that. All right, another option, maybe we attack the queen right here with the rook. But then the queen could just go here, counterattacking our queen. All right, I don't know if I'll get this one right. I'm thinking we push this pawn. But if we do that, our opponent could just attack us. And then what? We go here. You know, threatening a mate here. Well, that doesn't even threaten a mate because our opponent is covering that. And at the same time, they could capture here and check our king and cause problems. All right. Yeah, this one is turning out to be trickier than I expected. Okay, if we immediately threaten a mate here and here, because the rook is covering those squares. Oh, I don't think they can cover both of those. Because if the queen goes, oh, well, they can block. All right, let's take a look at this. So, queen threatens a mate here and here. So if they block with the rook, well, then we are able to check here, and that looks pretty dangerous. So here we go. Then we check, and they just have to give up pieces here. So, I mean, that looks terrible. All right, well, I hope you did well on these problems. You know, feel free to leave comments, like and subscribe to support the channel if you haven't already. Thank you for watching and have a super chess day.